Hello, and welcome back to Books versus Movies, the podcast where I set out to answer the age-old question, is the book really always better than the movie? I'm Yuvia Almanza. I'm an actress and book lover based out of New York City, and today we will be discussing Horns by Joe Hill and its 2013 adaptation, Horns. Hey everyone, so I feel like I need to apologize because it took me forever to record this episode. I just got really busy out of nowhere. I don't know why I'm apologizing because obviously I'm pre-recording a bunch of these episodes so I can release them, week by week. So even though it took me a while to record it, it's not going to take a while for me to release it after releasing the other episodes. But I still feel like I need to apologize because that's just who I am. Anyway, we just got back from an insanely quick trip to Texas. We were gone 6 days, but literally 4 of those days were spent on flights. So that was not a very relaxing trip. But you know what? We went out there to see Orlando's play get read at a new play festival in McAllen, Texas, which is just great. So you know what? It was all worth it in the end. We went to South Padre Island for the first time and reminiscing on my brother's bad experience when he went. I don't know. I'll let him tell the story if he wants to share it. I'm not going to tell it, but it's a good one. Today we are going to be talking about Horns, the book by Joe Hill, and its 2013 adaptation, also called Horns, starring Daniel Radcliffe. So let's get into it. So Horns by Joe Hill follows Ignatius Parrish, who wakes up after a drunken night out, only to discover that he has horns coming out of his head. He thinks that these horns are not real. They're probably just a result of him being hungover. He's imagining them, whatever. It has been a year since the rape and murder of his longtime girlfriend, and obviously he was not in the best headspace considering what anniversary it was. Ig's life has kind of sucked this past year. Ever since Marin died, before her death, he had it all. He had a loving family, a loving girlfriend that he had been with for years. They started dating when they were kids, and now as adults, they spent at this point at least a decade together. They had spent so long together. He had it all, and everything just came crashing down after her murder. The worst part of it all is that in the court of public opinion, Ig is the one who raped and killed Marin, and he has since become ostracized from his hometown. No one believes that he didn't do it, and there's no evidence that was able to charge him and get him arrested and put in jail, but everyone is sure that he did it, and he has no way to prove otherwise until he discovers that the horns may be the thing that help him clear his name. The 2013 adaptation of Horns, starring Daniel Radcliffe as Ignatius Parrish, follows Ignatius or Ig, as he discovers that horns have now sprouted from his head a year after his beloved Marin was found murdered. So yeah, the film is a pretty faithful adaptation. As always, there are some differences, so let's get into it. So first things first, in the book, it opens, first chapter, immediately, first few pages that we are introduced to Ig. The book literally opens with him waking up after his drunken night out and discovers that he has these horns on his head. And now in the film, obviously we need to get a little more acquainted with Ig, so we get to see a little bit of his day-to-day life, and then maybe 5 to 10 minutes into the movie is when he wakes up with the horns on his head. So we get like a glimpse of Ig, we get a flashback of his time with Marin, and then Ig finally wakes up to discover that he has the horns sprouting out of his head. So that is a big one, and I get it logistically why the film has to do this. We kind of have to care about this character. We have to care about where he's coming from before we're kind of just thrown into this zany adventure with him. And well, I don't know why I'm saying zany. This is actually a very, very dark book. Don't let my use of the word zany fool you. This is not zany. Anyway, we are immediately introduced to, as I said in the book, we're immediately introduced to Egg, who has the horns growing out of his head, and we meet his girlfriend, Glenna. Glenna is a girl that he grew up with that has always had a crush on him and never gave her the time of day because he was in love with Marin. And so now that Marin has died, they have actually started to date and are a couple. In the movie, however, Glenna is just a booty call. They are not in an official relationship. She's just, the girl he grew up with that has a crush on him and doesn't do much she's just has such low self-esteem, I guess. But she's kind of known as the town slut. I don't really like referring to anyone in that way, but I don't know how else to describe her because that's what she is seen as. So she's just someone who is as lost and as broken as Egg and is his one-night stand. Now, the book is split into 5 different parts. The second part focuses solely on Egg's childhood and how he becomes best friend with his best friend and how he meets Marin, how they end up together, all that jazz. Obviously, the film is not split into 5 parts. It's a lot more expedited. But anyway, during the second part, we discover that Marin had an older sister who died extremely young of a very aggressive form of breast cancer. So Marin and her parents moved to this town to kind of get a fresh start after that. In the film, there is no older sister. It is just Marin and her father who moved here. I don't know what I'm saying here. Moved to the town after her mom is the one that died of cancer. Now, in the book, there is talk of this tree house, this like magical tree house that Egg and Marin discovered one day by chance, and someone tried to get in while they were up there once and scared that person off, and they were a little shaken up and they left, and they tried looking for that tree house again, and they were never able to find it again until he finds it again at the very end of the book. So it's kind of like this magical tree house that is there, and then it wasn't, like, it just disappeared, and then they're never able to find it again until Egg finds it again at the very end of the book. But in the film, this treehouse is always there. It's not a magically disappearing treehouse. It's constantly there. Visually, it plays an important role. They focus on it a lot. Marin is actually murdered on the base of the tree that holds the treehouse. So the treehouse in the film is visually and significantly important, but just something I wanted to bring up because the treehouse is not supposed to be there constantly. So what prompts them to, so this is where we're starting to get into spoiler territory and some big major spoilers for the book and the film start now. So if you want to be surprised by the deal with the horns, if you want to be surprised by who killed Marin, who is responsible for her murder, all of that, stop listening now, go read the book, go watch the movie, and then come back and listen to this. But if you don't mind spoilers, or if you already know what happens, then continue on listening. Now that we've gotten the spoiler alert out of the way, Marin breaks up with Egg on the eve of her murder. In the book, Egg is moving to England. He got a job that's taking him to England, and Marin encourages him. She kind of uses his move to England as an excuse to like, hey, so we've been together since we were kids. That's a little weird, don't you think? Like, we've never experienced love with anyone else other than ourselves, and that's a little weird. No, not a lot of people do that. So why don't you go to England and use that opportunity to date other people, get to know what you like, fall in love with someone else, and I will do the same here. And Egg does not take that very well because he wants Marin to move with him, and this is what causes the breakup. In the film, Ig is actually proposes to Marin, and she turns down the proposal. And because she turns down the proposal, he thinks that, well, in both instances, he thinks that she's cheating on him. Like, he thinks that she's already fallen in love with someone else, and she's hoping that with his move to England, she can now officially be with that person. And in the film, he thinks that that's the reason why she's turning down the proposal. So obviously, Ig does not take this very well, and he leaves in a huff and drives away and leaves her behind at the diner that they were at. In the book, after Ig leaves, Marin leaves on her own, like she leaves walking, and as she's walking away from the diner, she is picked up by Lee Turneau, who is Ig's best friend, and Terry Parrish, who is Ig's older brother. In the film, Lee and Terry show up as with like congratulations stuff, because Ig told them like, I'm gonna propose to her, come around this time, and we'll have like a huge party at the diner to celebrate the fact that she said yes. And so obviously they show up. Ig rushes past them on his way to leave, and they're kind of like, what happened? And she's like, that just didn't work out. And from there, Lee and Terry offer her a ride home. All right, one last spoiler alert, this is your absolute last chance to leave before I reveal who is the person that raped and murdered Marin. If you're still here, then, this is on you at this point. But anyway, Lee Turneau, Ig's best friend, is the one that kills and rapes Marin. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, it's the best friend. So what happens in the book is that it's pouring rain when Lee and Terry pick up Marin as she's walking home from the diner, and they pick her up, and she's drenched. So Lee gives her the opportunity. Lee's like, do you want to change? Like, I got some clothes. He pulls over. She goes into the forest to change out of her wet clothes, which in hindsight, I'm like, why wouldn't she just stay in her wet clothes? Because changing in the forest seems counterintuitive, because you're going to take off your wet clothes to put on dry clothes that are then drenched. You know what I mean? Now that I think about it, the motivation for that is a little odd, just considering it's still raining when she gets out of the car to change into dry clothes. I don't know. Anyway, so she gets out of the car, she goes to change, Lee follows her, Terry falls asleep. And when he wakes up, the next thing he knows, he's like, where's Marin? And then Lee ends up confessing to Terry what he did, and he blackmails Terry into keeping it a secret. And Terry is just ridden with guilt over this. I messed up. No, in the film, Terry's the only one that shows up at the diner to celebrate the engagement, and Lee isn't there. So Terry's the one that starts driving Marin home, and he's like, hey, you want to talk to me? And then he starts hitting on her, which gross, dude. That's your little brother's almost fiance that they've been with since they were kids. Why are you hitting on her? So obviously she gets pissed off at this, tells him to pull over. She gets out of the car and starts walking into the forest. He's like, what? Where are you going? And then he's like, well, I'll just wait here until you're ready to go home, because you shouldn't be walking through the forest. And he falls asleep at the wheel. Lee shows up a little while later, sees Terry's car, goes into the woods, finds Marin, and you know what happens next. So the way he commits the murder is he uses a rock on her head. So what he does in the film is he takes that rock and takes it to Terry's car. Terry is knocked out because he's a drug addict, so he's high on something. And Lee he takes the rock and he smears Marin's blood all over Terry's hand, and he leaves the rock in his hand as well after he smears the blood and he leaves. Terry wakes up the next morning and is like, what is this? Why am I covered in blood? Why is there a bloody rock in my hand? Goes to investigate, discovers Marin, leaves. And so in the film, Terry has no idea that Lee was involved in any shape, way, or form with Marin's death. So the reason the book is called Horns, these are revealed to be devils, like the literal devil's horns coming out of Ig's head, and Ig discovers that he can use these horns to, like, people cannot lie in any shape, way, or form when they are around him because the horns prevent them from lying. They spill all their secrets immediately. If Ig touches someone, he can see their whole life, so he knows everyone's secrets. There's nothing that people can't keep. Like, there are no secrets that he can't keep from him. So there is this waitress at the diner, and she tells police that she knows that Ig is the one that murdered Marin, and she says she falsifies a story and basically says, like, she saw Ig being abusive towards Marin, and in the book, she, Ig goes to investigate and is like, why would you say that? And she tells the truth. And basically she says that she wants to she did it for clout, essentially. She wanted some attention, and she made up the story about Ig so that she could be all over the news and be the star witness at his trial, because now that she has revealed this piece of evidence, it's looking like the police can hopefully use that piece of evidence to make an arrest against Ig. And so with the horns, Ig uses his powers of coercion. The horns also give him the power to use them on anyone, and he can tell them to jump off a cliff and they'll do it, essentially. So he uses his powers of coercion to get the waitress to tell the truth, like retract her statements and tell the truth and say, I made that up. If you can hear fireworks, I am sorry. It is 4th of July weekend. They're gonna go off. Okay, anyway, so that's it. He uses his powers of coercion to get her to tell the truth. And I liked that, because so the reason we discovered that these horns have appeared is Ig is so consumed by rage and a desire for revenge that the devil is going to help him do that. But what I really, really liked about the book that isn't present so much in the film is that Ig is focused on getting his revenge on one person and one person only. And that is the person who killed Marin. He obviously does not agree with what the waitress did, but after he finds out that, she's essentially a sad, lonely person who just wanted attention, he's just like, okay, well, tell the truth and screw you. But in the film, he starts getting revenge on so many people. He sends a snake to attack and disfigure the waitress, and he gets revenge on her for this false statement, which I didn't necessarily like. I like that Ig is using his powers to get to the bottom of it and bring justice, in a sense, to the only person that caused it. And the same thing with Terry. So in the book, Terry is a rising TV star, and in the film, he is a musician. In the book, Terry lives in LA. Like I said, he's a rising TV star. When Ig goes to meet up with Terry, obviously the power of the horns and combined with Terry's guilt really makes him confess everything that he knows about what happened to Marin. He's the one that reveals to Ig in the book, obviously, that Lee is the one that killed Marin, and he knew that all along, and his guilt has been eating away at him ever since. He's turned to drugs and alcohol to kind of try to numb it, because he just feels so guilty. But the blackmail, he was just so scared of the blackmail that Lee was going to use against him. And so Terry, and that's another reason why Terry has run away to LA. He just can't look his brother in the face. And in the film, when Ig, obviously Ig ends up finding out that Terry had nothing to do with it, but Terry, because of the rock in his hand and the blood, he thinks that he's the one that hurt Marin. So Ig gets his revenge on Terry as well. He makes Terry overdose, and he goes through like these horrible hallucinations, and then he wakes up in the hospital in an overdose. And in the book, Terry just takes a lot of compassion again on his brother. And while he is obviously very, very pissed off at his brother for keeping this information from him, not standing up for him for a whole year, letting people believe that he's the one that did this to the love of his life, he takes compassion on his brother. And maybe that's just easy for him. I don't know. Maybe like the filmmakers don't have good relationships with their siblings. And I don't know if Joe Hill has any siblings, but maybe if Joe Hill does have siblings, maybe he like has a good relationship with them. Because like speaking personally about my, when I think of my brother, I would be incredibly pissed at him if he did something like that to me. Like if he ran away knowing that I was innocent and he knew who the real person was. But I think, once Ig discovers why Terry did what he did, and he senses the remorse and the guilt dripping from out of him, he can't help but still feel compassion toward his brother. And using his power of coercion, he tells his brother to leave, to go back to LA, to continue his career, and just forget about what happened. Like, he's like, you told me what I needed to know. I know who I need to go after. Move on, live your life, and just forget about me. And, and I just think that is so beautiful. And I don't know, there's just something that shows a humanity to Ig. And I don't know, because you know what? Maybe that's just me. And it speaks to who I am as a person, because I know like Orlando's probably out there listening to this and being like, oh, hell no. If my brother or my sister knew who killed you, out of my life, cut them out. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But Orlando is just a lot more angry and a lot more like Ig from the film. We're not going to go into any more detail than that. But, I'm trying to get him to change his mentality a little bit, possibly, maybe. I don't know. I don't want him to change, but I don't want him to hold on to so much hate and anger. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think of like my brother, and I feel like if he did that to me, yes, I would be incredibly pissed off. But if he was dripping with guilt and remorse, and I saw how it was gnawing away at him, I know I would forgive him in an instant. And I really liked that about Ig's personality in the book. And I wish we had a little bit more of that in the film, because once he goes on his vengeful tirade, it is nonstop until he gets to Lee. Anyway, that was really deep and I went off on a tangent there, but that was just something that I really loved about Lee. I mean, yeah, no, not Lee. Oh no, not Lee. About Ig in the book was just how he had these moments of like, what you did was effed up and you're gonna fix this mistake, but you're not the one I'm after. I know who I'm after, and I'm gonna make sure that person pays for what they did to Marin. So moving on to Lee ends up killing Ig, or he thinks he kills Ig. So in the book and the film, Lee is wearing Marin's cross, and the cross is preventing, I mean, obviously these are the powers of the devil, so the cross is preventing Ig from using his powers on Lee. So initially when Ig sees Lee wearing the cross, he thinks like, oh no, this is the person that Marin has been cheating on me with this whole time. And then after he finds out from Terry that that is not the case, and in the film, he ends up finding out in a different way. I think he just like goes to talk to Lee, and then the chain just breaks, and then since he is no longer immune to the devil's powers, Lee ends up confessing to Ig. And after he confesses to Ig, this is the film, Lee, he and Ig start fighting. Lee kills Ig, or he thinks he kills Ig. He dumps his body into the water and he leaves. Lee is a cop, so he's like, I think Ig committed suicide. And so he starts saying like, I found Ig's body, he committed suicide, blah, blah, blah. In the book, Lee does not kill Ig. They do have their confrontation where at this point Terry has told Ig the truth about what happened to Marin, and he figures out about the cross, so he tears the cross off of Lee, and Lee ends up again confessing. He ends up getting away. They do fight, he ends up getting away, and so now Ig has to lay a trap to bring Lee alone so he can get his revenge. But the Ig does not die at any point at the hands of Lee. So in the film, I'll talk about the book first. So after Ig takes off Marin's cross and Lee confesses everything, and Ig confronts him about, no, that's not what happened. Lee doesn't confess. Ig ends up touching Lee after the cross has fallen off. Ig touches Lee and he sees, like I said, Ig touches people. He's able to see their whole life. So Ig sees that Lee is the one, and Terry was telling the truth. Lee is in fact the one that killed Marin. But after he touches Lee, he sees the events leading up to the murder. And this is when Ig ends up finding out during this flashback that the real reason Marin broke up with him is because she was diagnosed with the same incredibly aggressive form of breast cancer that her older sister died of, and she's gonna die as well. And so that's the real reason why she wanted Ig to move to England and start dating other people and hopefully fall in love with someone else. And she confesses this to Lee right before he murders her, obviously, but at some point between the diner and him murdering her, she confesses, like, this is why I had to break up with him. And yeah, and she just doesn't want, she knows that if she tells Ig that she has cancer, he is gonna drop this wonderful opportunity, not go to England, stay with her and watch her die. And she does not want that for him. Like, she wants him to start moving on with his life. And in the film, the way he discovers that she has cancer is he goes over to her house and bonds with her. He manages to bond with her father. Her father obviously hates him. He thinks that Ig is the one that brutally murdered his daughter, but with the power of the horns, he's kind of able to bond and come to some sort of understanding with her father. And the father allows Ig to go into Marin's room. And as he's looking through her stuff, he discovers a letter that she wrote that she never intended to give him. And that's how he finds out that she has cancer, because she's like, I'm obviously not going to give you this letter, but I don't want you to give up your life while I die of cancer. So I'm not sure that I agree with Marin's thinking. I get it. I get where she's coming from, for sure. I know that, like, if I was dying of cancer, and you just keep turning this back to me, you're finding out a lot about me today. Mind you, it is different because Orlando and I are married now. But if, like, I had found out I had cancer before we were married, I don't think I would have. I understand the burden and how much it would have broken him to find out that I only had however many months or weeks or days to live, and that absolutely would have broken him. But, like, I feel like that's his choice to make. Like, if he wanted to stay by my side throughout something like that, then that's his choice. So I think I don't agree with Marin's line of thinking. Like, I understand why, but it's also Ig's choice and Ig's choice alone to make whether or not he wants to stick around with that. And I feel like if Orlando broke up with me and I ended up finding out later he just did it because he had cancer and he didn't want me to see him suffer, I think I'd be, like, really mad at him. Like, I'd be really sad, obviously, because he'd be dead by the time I found out, but I'd be really mad. I'd be like, how dare you take away my autonomy of deciding whether or not I want to be with you or not throughout this moment. But anyway, are you enjoying getting to learn so much about me? This is a really long episode just because I'm going off on these tangents. But you know what? I'm trying to make a point. Those are the big major things that we need to discuss concerning the book and the movie. All right. So this is how I rate them. So this is my second time reading Horns, and I don't know what it is, but I remember enjoying it the first time around. I didn't like the ending. I feel like after everything, obviously Ig gets his revenge, and so he gets his revenge, and then there's still, I want to say, like 20 to 25 pages of wrap-up left. And so I just found that after all the events and everything, it just ended up being very anticlimactic. I don't know. I was just like, the ending didn't do much for me. Reading it the second time around, I still agree with that statement, but I understand why the book was split up into the 5 parts. But I, like, rereading it, I was like, this is kind of slow. Like we can cut a few pages. I feel like we can make some edits and the story won't be as slow to get moving, especially because there'd be like something that happens and then the action would slow down a little bit and then the action would pick back up again and then it would slow down again. So it was kind of just like, we can cut these slower parts out, I felt. So rereading it, I did not enjoy it as much this time around as I did the first time. This is also, I've seen the film before, so rewatching it, I don't remember how I felt about it the first time I watched it, honestly. But yeah, I'm just gonna go straight into the ratings, I suppose. So I rated the book 3 stars. Again, after rereading it, I found it to be just okay. I just had a lot more issues with it. It was harder for me to get through it. It was harder for me to enjoy it. I just felt like just some parts of it were very, very slow. And I did find the ending to be kind of anticlimactic. It's supposed to be like a happy ending because Ig finds the treehouse again and he's reunited with Marin. He ends up dying. The power of the horns and the revenge just take a toll on him. And he's reunited with Marin. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't even know what to say other than it was just like, okay, like after all that, this is how it's gonna end. All right, like I know it's supposed to be a happy ending. I get that, but I don't know. The film, I also gave it 3 stars. There are some things that some changes from the book that I did not agree with. And we already went on a long tangent about what those changes were. That being said, the winner of this Books versus Movies is the movie. I think the movie did a great job of streamlining the book. The unnecessary parts of the book obviously were cut out and it just streamlined the story, I felt, a lot more. We still got a glimpse into Ig's childhood, but it didn't go on for however, it just went on way too long, I think. Like, we still got a glimpse into the childhood. We saw him and Marin meet. We saw their relationship develop. We got everything that we needed to know. And it just went I think that was like the most boring part was part 2, which was all about the childhood. So it just felt like it went on and on and on. So I thought the film was a lot more streamlined. Daniel Radcliffe as Ig was great. We also have, oh gosh, I'm blanking out on his name, but he's also great. Joe Anderson. Yes, Joe Anderson. He played Ig's brother, Terry. You might know him from Across the Universe if you've seen that. But he was great. I thought overall the acting was great. I will agree with Orlando after watching it. Max Minghella, who played Lee Turneau, did not really like his portrayal of Lee too much. So it's one of those things that, he's giving kind of like this subtle performance. And then it's revealed that he's Marin's murderer. And all of a sudden he turns into like I'm the villain. Like his portrayal just went from being like really subtle to like, well, now that I'm evil, I gotta be evil. Ooh. It's like, no, like Lee in the book from beginning to end, like he's just such a little shit. And I didn't really feel like Max Minghella gave us too much of that. And yeah, especially once it's revealed that he's the villain of the story, like he just went over the top villain. This is gonna be a really long episode, guys. I had to go on my tangents. But anyways, let's wrap this up. So yes, this one, I have to give it to the movie. I felt like the movie just streamlined everything, all the issues I had with the slowness of the book. It just streamlined it, kept the action going, kept the just kept the action going. The only thing I wish that they hadn't changed was, like I said, Ig's, I don't know what to say other than humanity in terms of, I liked that Ig did not get revenge on every single person in the book. Like, I really, really enjoyed that. And I wish that the film had kept that. But that's my biggest gripe with the film, is that they got rid of that part of his character trait. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. And I have quite a few books. Oh, I was going to say, I don't remember what the next one I'm doing is. No, I do remember. It's going to be Good Morning Midnight by Lily Brooks Dalton. And its adaptation, The Midnight Sky, starring George Clooney and Felicity Jones. See you next time.